Thank you for joining us on Business News. In a bid to complement the federal government's efforts to improve the economy and create more jobs, a group of partners in the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises and the Job Creation Unit of the Vice President's Office are set to execute various MSMEs-focused interventions targeting 1.3 million beneficiaries across 17 states and FCT. These interventions are geared towards ensuring the realization of the President Tinubu administration's commitment to job creation and economic diversification, with the MSMEs playing critical roles. These projects will provide full market with 300 kVA solar panels and mini grids that will provide 8 hours of electricity a day to 6 fashion clubs and 2 furniture clusters. Other interventions are for car painting, drying hubs, and cold rooms for seafood storage, among others. Vice President Kashim Shettima has given directives on the speedy execution of the projects, as 5 of the interventions will be completed and delivered by December 2023, while 12 other interventions are scheduled for completion for December 2024. Away from there, now, Central Bank of Nigeria has stopped deposit money banks from using the gains arising from the foreign exchange policy reforms to run their operations. This was made known by the Director of the Banking Supervision Department, Mr. Haruna Mustafa, in a statement titled "Impact of Recent FX Policy Reforms, Prudential Guidance to the Banking Sector." He says, and quote, "The Central Bank of Nigeria has reviewed the impact of the recent foreign exchange rate regime change on the banking system and observed its potential to significantly increase naira value of banks' foreign currency assets and liabilities, resulting in varying levels of FX revaluation gains or losses across the industry," end quote. Mr. Mustafa said the APS Bank has instructed banks that have profited from the policy to resist using the proceeds gained for dividend payout or to fund their operations. Ghana is to learn from Nigeria's track record in agricultural production, such as rice, to boost its output. This is against the backdrop of the country's private sector players part with Nigeria and the production of crops including rice, wheat, soybeans, yellow corn, and sunflower production, amongst others. Lara Folanyo reports.
Ghana's economic ties with Nigeria dates back several decades, and the two countries have remained trade partners. The country is now working with Nigeria in agricultural productivity, as some players in its private sector have signed an agreement with Nigeria on production of crops including rice, wheat, soybeans, yellow corn, and sunflower, amongst others.
We realize that other countries in the sub-region have similar problems like we have in terms of net importers of rice. So once we develop our capacity, nothing prevents us from extending that capacity to our neighbors and other countries in the sub-region.
We are going to share experience, we are going to share technical know-how, and we are going to even share personnel across borders between the two countries, in order to strengthen our cooperation and make sure that whatever we do is anchored on global best practices.
The collaboration would not only cover production of agricultural commodities, but includes providing technical, financial and investment cooperation, as well as training and capacity building of the Ghanaians in the agricultural ecosystem. The Ghanaian side is hopeful it will aid the country's poverty reduction efforts through agricultural development. It also says it is in agreement with the country's agricultural agenda of adding value to the agricultural food chain, food security, and reducing food imports through the private sector.
Ghana has a similar problem where we are net importers of rice and want to change that narrative. And we want to follow the Nigerian success story by learning from you how were you able to do it, and then we should be able to change the narrative in Ghana as well.
We are collaborating with the Commodity Association that is involved in rice production in Nigeria. And the second area of collaboration is technical, financial and investment.
One of the cardinal foreign policy objectives of Ghana is what we call economic diplomacy. That is uniting our various countries through economy.
The development is described as being in line with the present administration's business-friendly commitments to making the private sector a key driver in economic diversification. Parties to the deal are highly expectant it will deepen the two countries' bilateral ties and also strengthen rice production in Ghana as it learns from Nigeria's wealth of massive rice production experience. Lara Folayo, TVC News, Abuja.
And our trade along the Abuja and Lagos corridor must be boosted in accordance with ECOWAS protocols on free movement of goods and persons. The controller of the Semi-Command of the Nigeria Customs Service says that sustained regional integration will be achieved through the adoption and implementation of effective strategies. TVC News correspondent Ifunanya Eze has more.
According to Controller Dera Nadi, the Semekrake Joint Border Post is one of the busiest border crossings in Africa and has emerged as the main frontier for trade in West and Central Africa. As he outlined the activities of the Semi-Customs Command between January and September, he revealed that transit trade between countries along the corridor could be further developed through compliance with agreed terms of trade.
It is important to note that the Nigeria 2022 fiscal policy measures by the Federal Ministry of Finance lifted the ban on export of goods imported into the country, hitherto prohibited under Item 8, Schedule 6 of the Common External Tariff. It is hoped that our stakeholders will take full advantage of this gesture. It is gratifying to note that the Controller General of Customs and the government of both countries and the stakeholders are all on the same page regarding the need to improve our relationship with a view to maximize the opportunities offered by the proximity of our two countries to the border and develop trade along the corridor.
His comments on enforcing compliance along the corridor highlighted the adoption of various strategies that have helped increase trade. Additionally, it has helped enforce the nation's anti-smuggling laws along the border.
I pledged to adopt new strategies to boost trade while enforcing the nation's anti-smuggling laws along this corridor, in line with the ECOWAS protocols on free movement of goods, persons, and services. I also promised, along the officers and men who are seated here today, to encourage compliant traders along the corridor, bearing in mind the challenges of the joint border post as one that is still recovering from the effects of the border closure.
As of now, the command has remitted 1.9 billion naira to the Federation account, representing 97.2% of the allotted target. Also, between January and September, various contraband items with a duty-paid value of 1.8 billion naira were seized. Ifunanya Eze, TVC News, Lagos.
To global markets now, Asian stock markets nudged sideways today, where the dollar took a breather. Its recent gains chastened by resistance from the central banks in China and Japan, and by traders waiting on U.S. inflation data to signal that interest rates may have peaked. MSCI's broadest index of Asia Pacific shares outside Japan was flat. Japan's Nikkei rose by 0.3%, with market looking to U.S. inflation data and this week's European Central Bank meeting to set interest rate expectations and the mood. Overnight, the weaker dollar and upgrade on Tesla from analysts at Morgan Stanley helped U.S. stock market gain. Tesla rose 10%. The S&P 500 rose 0.7%. In early Asia trade, U.S. futures slipped 0.2%. U.S. Justice Department accuses Google of monopolizing search space in a landmark case, which starts today. In the Washington courtroom, the trial is the biggest U.S. antitrust case against a big tech company since the same department took on Microsoft more than 2 decades ago over the dominance of its Windows operating system. This case centers on the government's contention that the tech titan unfairly forged its domination of online search by entering into exclusivity contract with device makers, mobile operators, and other companies that left rivals no chance to compete. Over the course of 10 weeks of testimony involving more than 100 witnesses, Google will try to persuade Judge Amit P. Mehta that the case brought by the Department of Justice is without merit.